they're lucky to get a job. So yeah, that would be great.
So I hear the Fauquier campus is getting an expansion.
Well, we have a site at Vint Hill that we, but it's free, so we just call it a site. It's just a building that they've let us use, so it's not our property or anything like that, and we don't pay the rent.
To New Horizons 2016 and the kickoff session in the Leader Spot program. We are going to talk about communication, the barriers to communication and how to overcome those. And we have a very catchy title, The Chief Eats Alone. And what does that mean to an organization, if that indeed were to happen? We have two presenters, David Urso from Blue Ridge and the president from Lord Fairfax, Cheryl Thompson-Stacy. Just a few reminders. Please make sure that your cell phone is on vibrate, that you fill out the evaluation via the app, and any paper evaluation, if the speaker so requested, goes straight to the speaker and is just for them, but will not be part of our overall assessment. Okay? I will kind of keep track of time. And the main thing to do, since this is a live stream, when you want to make a statement or have a question, please raise your hand, because everyone needs to hear what you are saying. And that includes people who are not physically here, but are participating via our web. Okay? So I'm going to, without further ado, give it to our presenters.
Great. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for coming this afternoon. We appreciate it. And as Dave and I talk, we'd be happy for you if you have questions during the presentation, want us to expand on anything, please raise your hand. We're fine with that, with doing it throughout the presentation and, of course, at the end. And as was said, I'm Cheryl Thompson-Stacy, president of Lord Fairfax Community College. And let me just start by explaining what the title of this session means, The Chief Eats Alone. It was an interesting phenomenon that I encountered when I became a community college president. And that is when you go to college events where you're all seated at tables, whether it be an employee luncheon that you're going to, the fall convocation, whatever the event might be, I'm someone that gets places at least 10 to 15 minutes early all the time. That's just something I do. So I would go to these events and I would sit down at a table and nobody would ever come and sit by me. They'd go to all the other tables, and unfortunately the people that came in at the end were forced to sit with me because there were no other chairs available. And I thought, this is really odd. I don't understand why people don't want to come and sit by me. I'm a pretty easy to get along with person, right, Jean? I have some people here from LFCC. I don't think I'm intimidating whatsoever, but I guess it's the position itself that perhaps is intimidating to people, that they don't have the confidence to sit down next to the college president. And we're going to talk a little bit more about reasons for that later on in this presentation. So as I talked to Dave about that, we started thinking about what are some of the opportunities that are available to you as you look to climb the career ladder. If you have career aspirations, what are some opportunities you are not taking advantage of, such as sitting by the college president, getting to know them a little bit, and they get to know you. And we wanted to bring those to you today and just give you some advice and things that we have learned in our own career paths. So before we talk about being comfortable and confident enough to sit next to the college president, you do have to understand the culture of the organization that you work in. And Dave's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dave. I go to meetings late, and because of that, I have to sit next to the president. No, I'm just kidding. I don't go to meetings late either, but it was, as Dr. Cheryl and I have had the opportunity to talk about that, I'm like, that story seems to me such an endemic of where we are in terms of leadership, of where we are in terms of self-confidence, and these fine lines sometimes between being a self-advocate and a marketer for yourself versus being cocky or conceited and being seen as someone who's too big of themselves. But as was said, we want to start by talking about culture. And I'd task each of you to think about at your own institution, if you had to describe what the culture of communication was. So it's pro-communication, it's anti-communication, we welcome and grow in it, but thinking about the culture of communication at your home institution for just a second. That's all the time we have for that. But as you think about that culture of communication, all I can say is whatever you perceive the culture of communication to be is actually what the culture of communication is. And a lot of times we work at institutions where we have great values lists and impressive presidents who stand and say, we believe in this, and we believe in this, and we believe in this. Yet the lived experience on the front lines is very different than that. And what we have to understand culturally is that the lived experience is what trumps. What we actually experience every day is who and what we are. That's where the difference comes from. And if you let me share a story from psychology on that, they did a study where they put a bunch of monkeys in a space where you would put monkeys. And they put these 4 monkeys in the monkey space, and there was a tree with bananas on it. I didn't say it was a biology or zoology story. It's a psychology story, okay? There was a space with monkeys. Okay, so there was the 4 monkeys in the space, and there was a banana tree. And the first monkey went to climb up the tree to get a banana, and they took a fire hose and they sprayed the monkey off the tree. So they did this, and each monkey who went up, they took the fire hose and they sprayed the monkey down off the tree. Now in time then they went in and they took one of those 4 monkeys out, and the other 3 monkeys, there were 3 monkeys, 3 old monkeys and 1 new monkey in the, we'll call it an aquarium. I know that it's not an aquarium, but at this point it's a monkey aquarium. Okay, so the monkey aquarium was filled with 3 monkeys who had been sprayed and 1 monkey who hadn't. And the new monkey went to climb the tree, and the other 3 monkeys came and they pulled him down from the tree. Okay, and said, don't go up there. So then they took another one of the old monkeys and put a new monkey in, and they did it with the 3rd and they did it with the 4th. And eventually there were 4 monkeys in there, none of whom had ever been sprayed. And when one of the monkeys went to climb the tree, they went and pulled him back down and said, no, no, you can't. That speaks to me so much in terms of cultural impact, that the experiences we create and what we say, that's how we've always done things here, stop people from sitting in a situation and say, can we try this, or what can we do with this? And when we talk about communication, some of what we're going to share with you today is saying communication is a risk sometimes. But understanding how you calculate and present that risk makes all the difference. One of my favorite adages is when an old fish swims up to 2 young fish who are swimming in the water with him. And he says, how's the water today, boys? And the fish smile and he swims away. And then the one fish looks at the other fish and says, what the hell is water? And when we talk about culture, sometimes we don't understand that culture is what we live and breathe every day, but each of our institutions projects something about, is this a safe place to communicate? Is this a safe place to disagree? If I am a dean and I skip over the vice president and speak directly to the president, is there a cost that could come with that? Am I seen as trumping culture and taking a chance that's not right? Or does the president who says they have an open door policy actually mean that? So knowing and understanding that culture really matters. It's where it comes from, and it bleeds through to so much when you talk about advancement and things like that. For an example of what's happening at your institution, are there any deans in the room? Any deans? 2 of us? Okay, good. So this story is irrelevant to the vast majority of those of us gathered today, but I like to think about it about when we talk about advancement, when we talk about pushing forward, some of the brightest stars we have in the Virginia Community College system are our adjunct faculty. We hire full-time faculty all the time. Our adjuncts apply and are not accepted for any number of reasons. To understand your organizational culture, ask the follow-up question, who owns the conversation with that adjunct? To look them in the eye and say, you did not get this full-time opportunity for the following reasons. If we don't do it, we've disserviced them, and our culture isn't one that says we're developing the best people to move them forward. Looking at the way we transition people through our organization is a fundamental aspect that underlies anything else we might speak about this afternoon.
I just wanted to chime in about the part-time employees. I know at all of our colleges we have a high percentage of our employees who are part-time, whether it be adjunct faculty, whether it be people in student services and other areas of the college. And at Lord Fairfax, I felt like, and others did too, we weren't doing enough to professionally develop those people so that they could have a clear path at the college. And there are only so many opportunities too, and we have a lot of part-time people and then less full-time positions, especially as you move up the ladder. But we started an in-house employee leadership program just this year to especially, that was the original intent of it, was to focus on part-time people and what can we do, because they work so hard and they are such wonderful contributors to our college. And we also know that for the most part, they're committed to the college, and if they get that full-time job, they will be a long-term, wonderful employee. So that's one of the things we have done at LFCC too, is to try to put more emphasis on that group of people and help them achieve their career goals. One of the things Dave and I did want to share with you too is just a little bit about our background and how we have taken different positions at different colleges. I started out in higher ed totally by accident, had no clue that I would be working in education. I was getting a bachelor's degree in marketing, and I was working at a grocery chain in the meat department. I was a member of the meat cutters union, as a matter of fact. And about a month before I graduated with my bachelor's degree, the grocery store went out of business, or a lot of the particular stores, A&P grocery store, if you've ever heard of them. So, being a good planner, I did not have a plan B. I'm like, oh no, I thought I was going to get into this management track and work my way up to be a manager of this grocery store. So what do you do when you don't have a plan B and there's not many jobs available at the time? It wasn't nearly the recession we just got out of, but it wasn't a great time. There were less jobs than there were job seekers. So what do? You go to graduate school. And I got an internship in the financial aid department at Kent State University. And they paid my tuition and gave me a couple $1,000s in addition to that. And I said, this is really a neat environment. You have a lot of faculty who care very deeply about what they teach. You have students who in general want to be there to make a better life for themselves and their families. What's not to like about this? And then I was fortunate enough to get a director of student services job at one of the branch campuses of this university. Then I started adjunct teaching and faculty evaluation. They added academic instruction to my title. It was the smallest regional campus of this university. And then I became a dean of business at another community college in Northeast Ohio. And from there moved to Biloxi, Mississippi as vice president of academic and student affairs. Then went to Eastern Shore Community College as president of Eastern Shore. And then 7.5 years ago almost, president of Lord Fairfax Community College. So much of what I say to people is more of the do as I say, not as I do, because I didn't really have a great plan in place. It just happened and evolved. And I often think back, if I would have only had a better plan, I might have been able to reach a goal of presidency, several years before I was able to. I didn't know that I wanted to be a community college president until I was in my early 40s, and then I was about 47 when I got my first college presidency. So that's why we want to share with you some of the things you can do to position yourself to achieve those career goals perhaps earlier in your career rather than having them happen just by chance. But it's been a wonderful, exciting career for me so far, and I've enjoyed just about every minute of it.
And especially why communication matters. And that's sort of what we want to talk about. I'll introduce you to my story in 2 minutes or less, but part of it is that it makes no sense. I very much own the idea that there is no logical reason for me to be doing the work I'm doing today in the seat I'm in. I went to college at JMU. I have a bachelor's degree in hostage negotiation. My plan was to work for the FBI. I still feel I deal with hostage negotiation situations on a regular basis. It's just a slightly different iteration of those particular things. To Dr. Cheryl's point, when I found out senior year that I was applying for FBI jobs and they said, you needed to apply for it takes 18 months to get a job in the FBI. I said, you know who we should share this with? And they said, who? I said, juniors in the program. Do you think, because now I have no plan. So I went to graduate school, which I did. And then I got an internship at a community college. In 2004 was the first time I ever set foot on a community college campus. And we can get a beer one time and I'll tell you how I ended up actually going to the community college, because that doesn't make sense either. It involves a good friend of mine who got a flat tire and I went to bring her the rest of the way in. But that's how I walked onto a community college for the first time. At the end of my internship, I was hired as an advisor. I was promoted 18 months later to coordinator of student life, and I felt really good about it until I realized it was a budget move. They were like, we're going to give you more responsibility. I was like, that's great. They're like, we also got rid of the whole team that used to be doing that, so go you. Vaguely, life is cyclical sometimes, isn't it, how that happens? But so I did that, and that was in 2006. In June of 2009, my wife and I gave birth to twins. We both gave birth. I know she did most of the, trust me, with twins it happens. And 3 months later, Dr. Cheryl called me into her office and said, we need to talk to you about your job. And I was like, oh, all right. She said, I want to move you over to the foundation. And I said, what, huh? I said, I don't know the first thing about foundation. She said, but you know how to build relationships and you know how to talk to people. That's what that office needs right now. So in September 2009, I walked over to the foundation and ran the foundation. And in 3 years, we made $2.5 million. We built relationships. We built a brand. We developed it. And because we had built a relationship where I was candid and transparent, in January of 2012, I went and said, I need you to let me go. And she said, are you asking me to lay you off? I was like, whoa, no. I need you to help me position to go back, because we've rebuilt what we need to have here at the foundation, and now you need a fundraiser who knows how to deliver you money. And because I desperately miss student interaction, which is why I entered this field in the first place. I mean, I know I was going to hostage negotiation and now I was in education, but conceptually I had bought in by this point a decade later. And she did, and on a whim that makes no sense, Blue Ridge Community College takes the chance and interviews me. And 4 years later, I'm the most celebrated dean in the history of Blue Ridge Community. Is that an overstatement? Was that, no, it's, okay. All right, Tara is the most celebrated. Well, Hera is actually the new president dean, so I am the second to the bottom most celebrated dean hired by Blue Ridge this year. 1-year appointments. I've lost all control. Yeah, well, all right. So now we know where the bar starts. I'm also looking for work now, actually, based on that. But I think part of that communication comes because hopefully, and Dr. Cheryl's going to speak to this in just a minute, I felt like I had a potential in me that I hadn't found the way to tap into yet. And I was willing to communicate that out and say, I feel something, I think something, I may be someone who makes sense here. And I think understanding my own potential opened the doors. But as someone who has screened for potential and built potential so long, maybe you could speak to that.
Okay. It was very interesting to me to get to know Dave when he was at Lord Fairfax Community College, and he is somebody that displays the characteristics we're talking about today. He did make himself known to me. He did sit with me at lunch maybe once, I'm not sure. And I got to know him in a different way than him being a coordinator of student activities and student services, because that's not an office. I interact with all offices, don't get me wrong, but there are some people I interact with on almost a daily basis and others that I don't interact with as often. And I saw his potential. He has shared with me what his career goals are. Hopefully you have someone at your organization or even outside your organization that is interested in mentoring you. I love mentoring people. I love helping people reach their career goals. Maybe when I retire someday, I'll be a consultant that helps people do that. But I really enjoy seeing people realize their potential and playing just a small role in their ability to do that. It's something that I value very much. So don't hesitate to ask folks for their help and for their advice. Most people love giving advice, and those of us that have been in the business a while really have learned things and have some wisdom that we like to share. And I just encourage you, I didn't really have any mentors as I worked my way up, and I don't know why, maybe at that point in time it wasn't the thing it is now, but please reach out to people and let them help you. One of the things we also wanted to talk about was characteristics of people in the college that you value. I already told you a little bit about Dave and how we did forge our professional relationship, which remains to this day, I'm very happy to say, and we keep in contact often and share thoughts and ideas. But when you think about what type of person you see in a leadership position at your institution, for me, there is one characteristic that stands far and away above the rest, and that's a positive attitude. That's it for me. I mean, if you have a positive attitude, there are some other skills and expertise that you can learn, but if you don't have a positive attitude, it's very difficult to teach someone that, especially depending on what age they are. So that is far and away what I look for. That doesn't mean you have to be the extrovert or the person that has the ability to tell jokes all the time. You can be very positive and yet very quiet too. And think about your own institution. And if you're sitting by someone who's in the same college that you are, if you talk to them and say, who's our most negative people that we have here at the college? I guarantee you that you will come up with the same 2 or 3 names, hopefully not 23 names, but the same 2 or 3 names. I guarantee you that you will do that. And that's the person that if you're walking down the hallway and you see him coming the other way, you take an immediate right into the restroom or down another hallway or into someone's office. So if you're that person that people are dodging, that they don't want to meet you in the hallway, then there's a problem there that you probably need to work with, because what kind of people do you want to be working with each and every day? It's not the person that is, oh, woe is me, this is going wrong, nothing's ever right around here. Obviously, I want to hear from people when we do have issues, because there are issues. There always will be, no matter where you work. But if it's every single thing that's an issue, and every day there's an issue coming up, that says more about you than it does about the administration. So just keep that in mind when you're working on different projects at the college. Be the person that energizes others. Be the person that someone else looks forward to coming to work and sitting down with them and saying, oh, there's exciting things going on. What can we do to make this happen? Some of the other characteristics that folks have, I don't know if any of you want to join in, but think about some of the best bosses you've had. I've had about 13 different direct supervisors in my career, and what are some of the characteristics that you've heard? And you can just yell it out, and I'll repeat it for those folks that are live streaming. What are some things? Pardon? Integrity. Oh, absolutely. Trustworthiness. You have to be able to believe what that person is saying to you. How about some others? Just supportive. Kind of like I was saying, somebody that wants you to succeed and will do whatever they can to help you. Transparent. That's a good thing. And let me just take a side note from that. One of the hardest things sometimes is to make tough decisions. Decisions you know that some people are not going to be happy with. And there are some leaders that do not have that ability. They don't want to make that tough decision. They take forever to make that tough decision, and that leads to a lot of morale issues too. And in transparency, when you make those tough decisions because you have to, of course you get input from people and you try to build a consensus, but sometimes there's things you have to make a decision about, like there's a budget shortfall. What are we going to do? What's going to happen? That would be the president's final decision to make. And you have to be willing to do that, but you have to be transparent about it. And when I make a decision like that, I will have an open forum, something like this, and describe the situation, what options there are, what options we're going to pursue, and why. That doesn't mean everybody's going to agree with you. There will still be people who disagree with the decision you've made, but they understand the rationale behind it, and they're more willing to work with you and try to make things as successful as they can be. So transparency. Anybody else want to? Yes.
Clarity of expectations.
Clarity of expectations for you as an individual?
Yes.
And your department? Yep.
And recognition.
Recognition, so a pat on the back when things go well.
We have one over here.
Stand with your faculty.
Stand with your faculty, not against the faculty.
We're not behind them.
Not.
They literally are there for you.
Excellent, and yes.
Someone that listens.
Someone that listens, that's always good, isn't it? And truly hears what you're saying.
Right.
Not just shakes her head, but listens and understands. Yes.
Someone who empowers.
Empowering person gives you the responsibility and also some of the authority to do those projects.
Positive-minded and a sense of humor.
Positive mind and what? Sense of humor. Yes, I agree with you. I want to have fun at work. Not every minute of every day is going to be fun, but I want to have fun. Yes.
Being more of an interdepartmental team player instead of being an
Being more of an interdepartmental team instead of being
more miserly, don't step on my territory.
Yeah, no silos. Let's work together and try to accomplish things. Yes? Follow through. Do what you say you're going to do. That's a good one, too. Yes?
Accessibility.
Accessibility. Open door policy whenever possible. And then you can see on the flip side, and we won't go through the exercise because I know Dave has some things he wants to share. But on the flip side, when you think about some of the worst supervisors you've had, what are their characteristics? I think about the very worst one I had, and it gets back to something John Capp said about integrity and honesty, and somebody that outright lied to people. And of course, they didn't know it at the time, but found out later and lost all credibility. He had no ability to accomplish anything after that. So there's thousands of leadership books in the bookstores and online, and I think sometimes it's as simple as think about some of the most effective people that you have reported to and that you have worked with and emulate those characteristics.
Yeah, understanding those is so important, and I think that's the first step in the battle. And if you need to follow the path I did, I can show you how to medicate your way to a positive attitude. It's far easier than you thought, and you can do it on a regular basis, and it stabilizes. We can actually arrange it this weekend. That's probably the one that's going to cost me. We'll see, ultimately, which
That's
one
the
does.
one?
I don't, there's a lot of options. But when you talk about sort of having those traits, it always reminds me, my dad, as he was raising me, told me all the time, he said, you can be whatever you want, but whether you're an executive or whether you're the janitor, you need to be the best of that you can be. And I think all these traits we're talking about, the most important thing you can do, at least if I'm working with you and you say, I want to advance, I want to grow, is do your current job exceptionally well. So if I know that you want to be a dean, but you're not doing well in the classroom and your grading is behind, or your students complain that you're missing office hours, it's going to be so much harder for me to mentor you towards a deanship when we have to develop you as a faculty member first. And I would imagine my boss, or Dr. Cheryl, would say the same thing, that if I wasn't doing well in my coordinator role, it would be a lot harder to move me, because it's easy when someone comes to you and says, give me another opportunity, let me have a new project, let me take the lead on something a dean would do, if they know that your current house is in order. But if I know that giving you this new project may help you become better prepared to be a dean, but it's going to come at the cost of your current situation falling even further to shambles, that's a really uncomfortable situation. Not only for you, because I see your path, but now it puts me in a really awkward position of having taken a chance and now have to double back to try to clean what that is up. So the most important thing you can do if you want to move forward is to do what you're doing now really, really well. And then when you communicate it, it makes a lot of sense, because then you sit down for an interview and they say, tell me about why this job matters to you. And you go, well, beyond being a faculty member, I've taken on these 3 projects in the last 2 years that have made me more convinced than ever that this is the right role for me. Because I will tell you, and not to get into, to divert with this, I believe that the dean's job is unbelievably misunderstood by the vast majority of people who work in higher education. And that's okay. I'm not saying, hey, feel sorry for deans or anything like that. I'm just saying I think that people who aspire to be deans get into the role and go, whoa, this is different than what I thought. I thought you just like told students, go back and talk to your faculty member. That's only 7.5 hours of the typical day. The other half hour we have lunch. So there's a lot of things that happen, but we want to talk real quick, and then we're almost to question time about the how to engage. So once you do it, because it takes, you know, if I see, even now, not Dr. Cheryl, but if I saw a president sitting at a table and went to sit, I would feel like an adrenaline rush. Like when I went and was like, okay, that's the seat, I got to go sit down there. And in my head, if you're like me, I would start to script, what can I talk to her about? What will be okay? How can I make sure that this is safe and that I don't accidentally do something wrong? And one of the very first times after I moved into the role with the foundation, she's like, hey, we have to go to such and such in Northern Virginia. I'm like, all right, I'll meet you up there. And she's like, no, we're going to ride together. And I'm like, God, that's like 5 hours worth of script. I don't have that. Folks, I'm not kidding. I sat down the night before with an index card, like trying to like write keywords that I can like slide out of my pocket to try to think about what it is. So in the first 10 minutes of the ride, because I had this glorious view of a president and their presidential mansion with their presidential chef and everything like that. And I'm like, oh, you know, what's your home life like? Like, what do you do? Do you like to cook? What do you do? She said, my average dinner, and I remember this, my average dinner is the English muffin. And I was like, oh, like English muffin pizza or some like special crepe? No, she's like, no, like a muffin that I cut apart, put in the toaster, and eat. And I'm like, you are a president. You should have people bringing you baskets of foreign foods to fill you. But it was all of a sudden, it was just this humanizing of what it was. And though I still confuse whether she likes Cleveland or Cincinnati football teams.
Cleveland.
Baseball, sorry. Yeah, Cleveland. Oh, right, because of the Browns. It was just this human overlay. And I think I've experienced that as a dean. For when I have tough spots as a dean in my job, I found that if I bring my family around, it reconstitutes me as a human. And there are just ways that if we realize that we all drive onto campus and off of campus the exact same way, and if I have a bad day, I take it home to my family the same way. If you have a bad day, you take it home to yours. And if we realize the president is the same way, there is no sitting president, VP, or dean in the VCCS who doesn't want to make other people deans and VPs and presidents. That's why we aspire into leadership. That's why we grow in these roles. And finding the courage to be like, I'm going to go up, I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to take a chance, I'm going to come up with something to say, only can yield positive rewards. Because then when I became a direct report, we had enough rapport for me to sit in her office at an overwhelmed week and say, I'm breaking right now. You got to help fix me because I don't know where the priorities are and my whole life feels like it's on fire. And for her to go, here's the 3 things we're going to focus on this week. But you have to have that rapport. So many of us just own our own crises all the time because we're not willing to communicate and say, here's the reality of my lived experience right now. And being in somewhere where you say, can I do that? Can I be comfortable? I've had people in my life where I go, will you mentor me? Can we engage in this relationship to actually craft it and then put them on the hook and say, I'm going to take advantage of that. Thoughts?
I didn't know you were scared to ride with me.
Totally terrified.
How about that?
You hit it well. But just to piggyback on some of the things that Dave was saying, when you talk with the president, and that's what we've been focusing on, and that's how we started this session out, I don't always want to talk about complete 2021. I don't always want to talk about how we're going to triple the credentials in the VCCS. I like talking about other things too. I like talking about sports. I like talking about the vacations that I took, the families that we all have, and that's what you need to remember. Don't think that you have to say something profound all the time and have all this wisdom you want to share with me. I sit down one-on-one with every new full-time person that we hire at LFCC within the first couple of weeks that they come aboard, and I know a lot of them are very worried about that. They come in, they're not quite sure what to say, and I say, I just want to get to know you a little bit, and you can get to know me a bit, and that way when I do see you at the campuses that I'm at, we'll have something to talk about. I want you to feel comfortable to come in and speak with me if you have an idea or thought, or you just want to say, hi, how's it going today? This week's been tough, or this week's been great. So just keep that in mind, and it's a wonderful trait to have that self-confidence, and it's hard to gain. And believe me, I was the same way when I was coming up through my career path. I never sat by the college president. In fact, if I walked in the room and they were sitting at the table like I am now, I'd go all the way around to the other side of the event center. And a lot of people do that. It's surprising how many. And when I talked with my direct reports just to get some feedback on this phenomenon and why it happens, they all said the same thing. In fact, one of our vice presidents, Kim, in this case, John, said when she was hired as a faculty member at Blue Ridge, and she sat at a table, and she said at the last minute, the president at that time, not John, but Jim came and sat down by her. She's like, oh no, the president's sitting by me, what do I say? So I just want you to feel more comfortable about it. Believe me, we're all people just like you, and it can only help you if you make yourself known. We're all guilty of that. When you hear the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. We're all guilty of that because you get to know someone, you know their skills, you know their expertise, you know their personality, you like working with them. Of course, that's going to benefit that individual. So please, please take advantage of that.
If you don't have something profound to say, you can deflect with humor.
Which
I
Dave
wouldn't
is
do
so
that,
good
but there
at.
are people who are funny people. I have a very wet sense of humor, but if it were dry, I would use it to my advantage, but it's not. So in a couple minutes, we'll open the floor for questions, but there are several presidents who we've been happy to join, and we wanted to give them sort of first crack at it to respond, or even to say, especially, at Blue Ridge, Dr. Downey has spent close to 30 years at the institution, which influences this, right? I mean, having been a product of that, how has that shaped you? And we're going to have to get you a microphone, but maybe you would speak to that for just a second. I think it's coming from this side.
Well, you can stay in the room because the next session is about my pathway to the presidency, and others are joining me. I know Linda and others. But for me, I think, as Cheryl said, it was a series of happy accidents that led me to the presidency. It wasn't something I really necessarily aspired toward or even thought about, but in each situation I put myself in, it led to another situation that would allow me to grow and change and be better. And so I think, what's so great about this session is that I think everybody in the room sees that community college personnel generally care about each other. and want to see students succeed, but want to see employees succeed too. And that starts with the president, and you know, we want to see each and every individual at the college model the behavior of success for our students. And so I think that's really what I'm getting out of this session, is that don't be afraid to reach out and seek mentorship and career guidance. It's something that really, I think, all of us benefit from.
It sounds cliche, but it's finding an excuse sometimes. I don't report to Dr. Downey now, but I will tell you, and he's probably figured this out in 4 years, I sit in my office and think of a reason to stop by his office. I'm like, you need to be seen, you need to be part of that and spark the dialogue, and you'll be shocked how much I come to say, hey, what are the closest enrollment figures? And 15 minutes later, we're talking about a subpart of another unit of the college and he's saying, what's your thoughts as an outsider? What can we try with this? And I think that's important. You have to put yourself in the context in which you can have that meaningful dialogue, and opening the door is half the battle, but so many of the leaders that we have, I think, operate with those open door policies. So,
Or you're talking about the New England Patriots, right?
well,
I know we're running out of time. Jean or John, did you want to? Okay, so question, Linda, I'm sorry, did you? Okay. So,
I'll just say that I can identify with everything that you have said. I always avoided sitting next to the president. Now I avoid sitting next to the chancellor. But, you know, just to pick up on what both of you have said, I think the most important thing is just to be genuine, just to be yourself and enter into a genuine relationship with the president or your supervisor or whoever it might be. People are quick to sense that lean and hungry attitude on the part of those who are overly ambitious. And as Dave said earlier, the most important thing is just to do your best where you are. And if you do your best, then you'll get to where you want to be.
I'll share this. I'm Virginia Hollins, and I was, and Cheryl and John mentioned that kind of stumbled into it. I was very intentional about what I wanted to do and how to get there, and so I was a little more focused in that. And so it can happen and it can occur. You need to be thoughtful about that. The other piece I would say is you can be a leader and you don't have to have a title. Leadership will surface. People, as John said, you see that and that's genuine and that comes through. So you don't always have to have the title to be an effective leader in your institution, and that's recognized pretty quickly. Leadership.
excellent point. Linda, did you? Any, we have about 5 minutes, so I'd love to answer questions. Oh, I thought you were raising the eyes. No, 5. We have 5. Love to answer some questions, or even if you just have thoughts you want to share. Yes.
Well, earlier you were asking about characteristics that you think are important. I'm sorry. Earlier you were asking about characteristics that you think are important, and I think it's important for leaders to be inclusive. I think it's very easy to always go to the same people to seek advice and to seek counsel, and I think part of that is because those are people you probably feel most vulnerable with. But I also think it's important when you're at the top that you really have to reach down into the organization and develop the same type of relationships that you're suggesting we develop. I think presidents and vice presidents also have to be willing to do some of that work and say, you know, I have not had lunch with so-and-so. Let me go and establish a rapport with them. Because I do think it's part of what we should do to mentor or to coach people, is to show them that it's okay to be vulnerable and that I can go outside of my comfort zone by going and talking with, you know, someone in buildings and grounds and establishing a relationship there, or someone in the counseling staff who's not the director but maybe a part-time worker, or someone at the cashier's office. So I think inclusive behaviors are really, really important. And then I think when people see that, when they see the leader emulate that, then they will probably feel more comfortable. But if you notice that your leader always goes to just faculty, for example, or faculty leadership, and never engages part-time faculty aren't going to feel like they have a pathway to go have a conversation. So.
That's excellent points. And you're right, it is easy just to go to the same people all the time because you know they're going to, you know what they're capable of, you've worked with them before, you have that comfort level, so you must reach out to as a leader. So I've seen the 3-minute mark. Yes?
I have kind of 2 little questions, but the first one is, you know, it's really easy to talk about active listening, but I think, you know, presidents and deans have a lot of pressing issues. So I was wondering if there are any could share any strategies that you have to actually disengage from what you have to think about and being able to concentrate on the people that you're talking to. And the other thing is I wonder how long was it before you realized that Dave was riding on your roof? Of your
This may sound cliche, and for those of you that don't know me, you may not believe what I'm going to say. I don't find it hard at all to disengage from whatever the pressing matter is that I'm working on in order to concentrate on you when you come to my office or when I go to your office, and I try to do that a lot too. Because the relationships we talk about building are what builds Lord Fairfax Community College. That's what we are all about. The relationships we have among our colleagues, the employees, and the ones we have with our student, and then our community leaders. And that is the most important thing to me. And I mean that very sincerely.
I think, too, it's about follow-up. So I would find a lot of times if we were able to have a meeting where I thought there were some clear outcomes, but maybe I felt like we didn't necessarily close the loop, that I would go back later and say, thanks so much for taking the time to me today. These are the couple takeaways I had. If we're not on the same page, let me know. And then to me, that was a good way to revisit it later and just sort of have that affirmation. Because to the point that was made by Tara's question about the inclusivity, if Dr. Cheryl goes and grabs a faculty member and says, let's just get a burger at lunch today, I would hope then that faculty member or staff member or part-time member, when she says, what are you trying to do? What is your plan? Has an answer. And even if that answer is different a month from now, different 6 months from now, and different from a year from now, when somebody in your life that might be able to open a door for you is saying, what's your plan? Having an answer is such a significant part of that. If you go, I don't really know. I'm just sort of going through the motions. I think that puts you at a strategic disadvantage in order to be able to get there. If you, we're out of time. If you're not on the app or going to do it that way, we would love feedback. We love to know if this was valuable to you. So I'm going to just leave these unfilled out on the front table. If you're not much of an app person or you just want to use a pen, if you do that, that would be great. And thank you so much for choosing our session. We really appreciate you being here.